Hello YouTube, RJ. Well, today it's time to build the prototype PCB for the Lynx EZ-SW receiver. Thought I'd take the instructions, what I have done of them so far, and just start going through and build the board. And I'll do some skipping and we'll do a little time lapse and such, so it goes pretty quickly. That's the idea, get this thing built today. So I pulled out my fume extractor. Let me move it out of the way. And let me let you see the instructions so far. The first page is basically telling you a little about the receiver and a few little hints in building and such. And then the build begins. And the build begins by giving you, and my printer needs some service work, as you know from one of the previous videos. I haven't got around to it, but starts out by giving you an image of the board. Instead of showing you the component markings, it gives you the values for each position to make it easier for you to build this. So there's not, where you have to go look up that C14 is this value or whatever. In this case, I just gave you a printout with the values right on the board, what need to be there. So you literally can do a direct from this layout, put that part on this position in the board. So I hope that's helpful. I think that's much quicker, in my opinion, doing it. I've been known to take, when they give you a list of, these are all 1K resistors, these are all such and such, to write it down into one document to reference as I built things. When there's a lot of parts, there's not that many parts to this, not that many different part numbers, but I'm hoping this will make it easier for you. So that's the first part of the build, is letting you know that this is your build guide. Keep this handy. Use this you're going to use this the whole way through the build. It says use the below image as a build guide. Install all of the 0.1 microfarad capacitors. There's 21 of them, so there's a whole bunch of those onto the radio PCB by bending the leads to fit and inserting them into the PCB in the positions shown flush to the surface of the PCB. Solder the leads on the back side of the PCB and trim the leads close to the PCB. Keep this page out for the rest of the build as a reference for part placement. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take and move this over here. I'm going to lay this right here. Get out my 0.1. Now, you say, okay, how do I know what's a 0.1 microfarad? Well, it also told you in the very first page that at the back is an inventory. And it had you go through an inventory, all your parts, to make sure you have them. You've got a picture of every component. The resistors, you get a good picture with the color codes for them. You can use your meter to check them if you'd like also. It literally shows you a picture of the component, how many you should have, what they look like, what we call them in the build instructions. If we go back here, and we were talking about we need to put the 0.1 capacitors in. Right here is the 0.1 microfarad capacitors. That's what they look like. There's 21 of them. So that's how you know when I say XYZ part, what that part is. So we're going to go ahead, just as the instructions said, we're going to put in 21 of these. Now I have a bag full. I don't have 21 like you will. So I will simply just pull them out as I need them. So in the kit, if we kit this, you would get 21 of these in a bag. One of the things that will tee you off is that since there's only 2 capacitors in this design, there is a 47 microfarad big electrolytic capacitor here. And these, basically everywhere you see a C with this emblem, you're going to put one of these. So that makes it easy. You don't have to go back and forth and be real careful with this. This capacitor right here is a different capacitor. Obviously, the big round circle tells you it's a different capacitor. So all of these little racetracks that say C, whatever the number is, they're all going to be these capacitors. You can just start wherever you want to and start putting them in. So bend the leads over, line them up, drop them in. Put them flush to the board. Get my pliers out here. Pull him down. Pull them flush, they'll almost lock in for you. You just go through to a whole bunch of those before we start soldering. So I'm going to go through and put all of these in. There's really no reason for you to watch me do this on every one of them. So I'm going to install each one of these, and then I'm going to solder them. And so I'll time lapse this and let you see me do it in a quick order, okay? So I'll be back. Okay, with that, all of them are stuffed in the board. We're ready to start soldering them in. Little trick or little tip I'll give you is I find it a lot easier if you go ahead and trim off these really long leads right now so that it's easier to get in there and solder. Just make sure that you keep push them up and bend them out just a little bit, just a tiny little bit to keep them up tight, and that's gonna make your job a lot easier soldering them. I'm going to push them and bend them just a little because I want to make sure my capacitors stay nice and tight to the board. They look professional, and it doesn't look like I did a sloppy job of cutting my stuff. One thing I do is sometimes when I'm cutting them like that, I'll pull them just a little as I'm doing it, and that does the bending for me, and then I don't have to go back and bend them. Just make sure you're pushing the capacitor with your thumb up into the board as you're doing it to make sure they're tight. And when you're done, you should have nice, tight fitting components. Your leads are going to go everywhere as you do this, but that's just the way things are. Okay, got that done. The other benefit that I failed to mention is you're getting rid of a lot of heat sinks, so it'll heat the lead up faster and be able to solder it quicker. That'll mean you won't have to be on the component as long. So let's get our solder iron ready. We're going to solder all of these on, and I'll time lapse that too for you so you don't have to sit and watch me do it. Also, I'm going to get my exhaust fan going. That's going to help me out from the fumes. Get it maybe over here a little, you can see a little better. So I'm going to do my thing solder, and I'll be right back. Okay, with that, I'm done soldering those in. I've inspected them, looked them over, made sure they're all soldered, acceptable to my, and so now I'm ready to trim them. Now you do your final trim where you come in, you actually trim the leads right off flush. You need one of these little flush cutters. If you don't have one, get one. If you're going to do electronics, this is one of your important, use all the time tool that's you can pick up reasonably inexpensive. The really nice ones are nice, but you don't have to spend that money. You will dull these over time. Don't use them on things other than like leads of electronics because other stuff's harder and you'll dull them very quick. I mean, you'll ruin them. You'll put notches and stuff. I mean, they're not really designed to cut hard stuff. They're designed to cut these leads very well and to be able to get right down on the board to make it very close to the board. That's what they're for. Use them for that. Don't use them to cut hard, wire. They're not wire cutters per se. Okay, look our board over. We're happy with that. We've completed that section of the instructions. That wasn't that bad. Very straightforward. So let's look and see what we need to do next. Once all the 0.1 microfarad capacitors are finished, install the resistors in the same way. Make sure the correct values get installed in the proper places as shown on your placement guide. Sometimes you want to have your resistor stand up off the PCB slightly so air can cycle under them for additional cooling, but none of these carry any current, so there is no need to have them off the PCB. In fact, having them flush down on the PCB leads to shorter leads, typo right there I need to fix. So there's no need to have shorter leads when complete, comma. This can be helpful with RF circuits by reducing parasitic induction. Just like it said, it wants all the resistors in. So we're going to start putting resistors in. So here's the 51 ohm. And we'll go ahead and put these capacitors away. So this is the 51 ohm resistors. And so we're going to go around and put them in. I see a couple of my capacitors, even doing what I did, managed to be standing up a little bit. I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to take my soldering iron because I want my board to look good. Put him down. It was just a tiny bit, but seems like there was another one I didn't like. Oh, this one over here is really, he's up a lot for my liking. So let me see if I can get him down a little. Good enough. So let's go on to our 51 ohm. Move this out of my way for the moment. If we look at our reference, we can see that we have a 51 right here. Let's go ahead and bend his legs. So 51 goes in here. Get him down flush and bend him a little. And we'll just continue on doing that. There's a 51 there. There's a 51. You skip one and there'll be another 51 right here. And so I will continue on doing this. I will go ahead and go grab me a glass of water and come back. I'll finish putting the rest of these in. I'll time lapse it. We'll get them soldered and we'll move on to the other resistors. So Okay, with that, we have the 0.1 microfarad capacitors on. All of the resistors are in the board. So now we're ready to move on to our next component. It's ready for us to do the terminal connector strips. I don't have them laying out here. So that would be the proper method. So let me go see if I can find some. I have some put away somewhere. Find them, I'll be right back. We'll put these in. Okay, it took me longer than I want to admit to find my terminal strips. You're going to get a strip, probably not this long, but like this. And what you're going to do is, as it explains here, is to look at how many you need for each one of these and cut them off using your little PCB cutoff tools. Make sure you cut it, each one of them the right length. There's a little notch, if you can see, in between. Get your pliers in there and cut cleanly to get the right length that you need for each of these. And then you're going to insert the shorter part in and solder them in. So I'll go ahead and get these all cut to length. Tells you in here in the instructions, it says you're going to need one with 8, one with 5. It goes through how many each you need. You're going to need 2 with 2 or 3 with 2, 3 of them with 2 pins on them. So you're going to do this right here. Okay. And now we have what we need. Put these back in the bag. And as I said, put the short pin part in the board, solder it, solder one pin, and then while you're heating the pin, you'll see me do in a minute. Can be a little tricky. It's best to hold some pins that you're not soldering. Try to hold them flush to where they sit down and feel flush, and try to get them tack soldered. Now, one of the things I do, this may work for you, may not. One of my little things I do is I usually get me a bunch of solder on my soldering iron like this. And I go to one of the pins I'm not holding, and I kind of try to get a little solder on it. Now it's not going to stick good. It's not going to flow and stick good because there's no flux. Let it cool though, and often that will hold your pin straight for you to actually allow you to then set it down easy. Go solder the other end with new solder where you're getting it some flux and you're getting it soldered well. Once it sets up, coming back and hit this one again. Now those two are holding you straight, and you can go ahead and solder all the rest of them. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of these soldered in here. Let me use my fan. And there you are. Now you got your pins for your cables for connecting to everything. So going back to our instructions, you can see here, let me show you the instructions. It said to all that what we just did, it tells you how long pins you need, how many. So it says solder these in the board, short side of the pins in the PCB. Next, we'll install the 2 crystal filters, X1 and X2. So let me grab those out. Again, don't forget, you have pictures of everything in the Appendix A, the parts list. So feel free to go look that up if you have any questions on what you're supposed to be putting in. And you'll get a little pack like this with 2 of these in it. The instructions explain that you need to be looking at the dots on the top of these crystals and the little white dots in their location. So let's look at our reference. If we look at our reference, we'll see that there's X1 and X2, and there's a dot on this side of X2 and a dot on that side of X1. So the dots on the board are together. So that means the red dots on the top, well, they're black. I guess they're black. I thought they were red. The black dots go together to this dot to that dot. So drop them in. Straighten them up. Bend you a couple legs a little bit to help you with keeping it in place. And then let's solder them in. Okay, let's inspect them. Looks good. Get our PCB trimmers, and take them excess legs off. And voila, we've got our crystal filters in. Let's see. Now it says you can install the 47 microfarad capacitor in. So here we go. Get one of those out. We have to be careful on this because this is a polarized capacitor. If you look at C20, you'll see that I've got a plus and a square pad. Your longer lead, you'll clearly see it's got a longer lead on it, goes in the plus to polarize this capacitor correctly. Sometimes your electrolytics will have other markings showing you minus and such. These particular capacitors don't. They show you just by the long leg, which will usually have a longer leg no matter what the markings are. So you can always go by that. So put him in, get him up flushed, solder him in. He's installed, he's flush, clip him off. All right, he's installed. So we're clicking right along. Now we're ready for voltage regulators. There are 2 of them. They are different voltages. You must pay attention to get the right ones in the right place. So we're going to start with the 7809. Look at the picture. You'll see in the picture what he looks like. They look exactly the same except for the writing on them. This one says 7809 CT. That's your 7809. He's going to go into the location here, and as it explains, the black section with the writing faces the number. So it goes in like this. This is how he fits. So we'll get him in. We'll try to get him straight the best we can, and we'll solder him in. Looks good. Got him pretty straight up and down. There you go. Let's put away the 7809s. We're done with them. Now we're ready for the 7805. Exact same procedure, except he goes in his spot. Okay, verify he is a 7805, which he is, 7805 CV. He's going to go in the same direction. The black with the numbers on the chip, on the TO220 package is going to face the number to be in correctly. Okay, he's in, he's relatively straight. We can clip him off. Okay, now it's time to install the 2 modules. We're going to start out by putting the SI5351 on. Now, this module, when you get it, will have this. It'll have probably have one extra pin that you have to clip off the same way we did these. You need to put him through the board, and the instructions show a picture. Make sure you get it right. The short will go through the board, but through the bottom. So this is up, and then this sticks through the bottom, and that allows you to stick this module onto our board, just as so. Just the outline that it shows, and then you're going to solder all these pins. So you'll have to come up with a way to hold it up in there. You can do it by your finger, maybe, to get it stuck like I showed you before. Just use a little put a good chunk of solder on your soldering iron. See if you can get one just to stick down enough to hold it for you. Just put a bunch of solder and go to one end that you're not touching, by the way. If you got your finger on that pin on the bottom, you're going to find out real quick. You're going to find out you didn't want to do that. We'll get a little solder on him and let him cool down. And now it's holding my module for me, so now I can go start at the other end and start soldering the pins. He's going to be great. He's happy. So it was that quick. Now I skipped putting the terminal strip on, but you get the idea. I'm going to have to take just a second because I've got an ESP module here. It's not programmed. I need to go ahead and throw the program on it. What you're going to get is you're going to get the ESP2032 and this together. They're going to be calibrated to each other. And so you won't have to do anything but put it on and solder it on. That's if we kit this. Let me go ahead and program that real quick. Okay, I'm back. We got the module programmed with our easy shortwave receiver code. So literally you're just going to pop the module in the board like that. It's that straightforward. And you got a lot of pins to solder. So obviously I won't make you watch all of them. I'll run through and solder them all. Okay, one of the things I should have pointed out, the instructions makes it clear. The USB jack on the ESP32 module should face to where it says USB on the board here. There's some other markings too. When you go to put it on, you'll notice that there's a marking on this end under the chip right now that says G&D ground. Then on this other corner you have a 5 volt, and if you look on the board you'll see, bring it up here, there's ground on that pin and 5 volts on that. So as long as you make sure those are lined up, you will not get it in backwards. At this point, this board is together. All we have left to do is hook up some switches, our LCD and encoder, which is all done with cables. Apply power. We've got some coax that's going to bring in our RF off an antenna tuner, and then we're going to have audio coming out, line out coming out of here that'll go to our headset jack and into our amplifier for our speaker. What you're going to get if we kit this is you're going to get some cables. Get one out. You're going to get some cables, some different size cables. This is your display, and you're going to plug the display in like that. And the only thing important here is to pay attention to what's what. So when you look at the cable, there's markings on the screen here. So when you look over here, you'll see one end says LED, one says VCC, and you look on here and you look and you see that the LED is the red cable. So this red cable right here needs to go to LED, this direction. So that plugs your screen in. So now your screen's plugged in. Your encoder is going to plug in also. You will also have a cable. You get one of these out. There's your encoder cable. You get an encoder. So what you're going to do is you're going to plug this on, put your dark blue to the ground, and come down to the encoder here. And I see a mistake on the board right now. I forgot to put my mark on here for which end is which. So I can clearly see that that's the ground on this end. So the dark blue goes this way, and the remade boards will have a marking on it to have that if we decide to kit. So you've got your screen plugged in, you've got your encoder plugged in. The only thing left to do is we're going to take some little buttons. You're going to have some little buttons sort of like this. You'll have two of these. Might not be exactly those buttons, but it'll be pretty close. Then you're going to have a switch like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to solder some connectors on there. You're going to take them wires, you're going to cut them the right length once I get a good measurement of what I need. And you're going to get some of these, and you'll get some leads like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut these leads the right length. You're going to solder those together, and that's going to allow you to plug, for example, that switch into here. That's your power switch to turn on and off the radio. You're going to do the same thing here. You're going to take, but you won't have a wire already on the switch. You'll go ahead and just cut these ends off, and you're going to solder them to these buttons. And then these buttons will plug in here. It won't matter which polarity. There's no polarity to it. It won't matter which way you switch it around. So that way, if you want to pull the board out or something, you don't have to disconnect everything off the front panel. You just unplug everything. Other than that, we have a set of DC jacks that you'll solder that will stick through the back for your DC barrel jack for your power. And we need to, of course, have our antenna tuner, which we've already built in a previous video. And you'll bring in a BNC jack in the side of the radio or back of the radio. It'll come in, it will solder to your antenna tuner. The out of the antenna tuner will come over and solder to the RF in and ground here. This will come out and go to a headphone jack and to the audio amp, which will go onto the speaker. And then this whole thing is complete then. That's the whole radio. I think it's a pretty simple build. I think it's really easy build. I don't see anybody having trouble building this thing. So the next phase of this is we'll pick up with another video. I'll go ahead and get enough stuff hooked up. We will power this thing up and we'll give it a try and we'll see if it appears to work. Hey, thanks for hanging out with this build. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Hope it was entertaining. And I really hope you'll hit the like and help me out. Do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed, that's a big thing for me. And most important, I'll see you in the next video.